What's up, Ragin Nation? How's it going? This is Alex here, and you're watching the Ragin Ronin review. I got a review for you. Last night I saw Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad is the third and latest film in the DC Extended Universe. It is also a film written and directed by David Ayer. And David Ayer most recently directed Fury, which was a brilliant World War II tank drama. He also directed a couple of LA crime thrillers like Harsh Times, End of Watch, and also Street Kings. And he also was the writer for an outstanding film called Training Day, which was directed by Antoine Fuqua. So he's now the writer and director for Suicide Squad, which is one of my most highly anticipated films of 2016. Totally looking forward to it. As a Batman fan, I was super excited, and I had some pretty high expectations, especially after I saw those amazing trailers, which look so good. So the big question is this film better than Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice? Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice was a bit of a mess. I still gave it a 5.5 out of 10. So the trailers for Suicide Squad did make it look better. So I'm going to give you a review and let you guys know what I think. First of all, I'm going to tell you guys that this review is spoiler free. You don't have to worry about any specific plot details that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about that at all. Let's just stick with a spoiler free review. So I'm going to start off by saying that this is a very bold move for DC films, the DC Extended Universe. They're doing some really unconventional forms of storytelling, and essentially Suicide Squad is DC's answers to Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy and also Fox's Deadpool. It's a film that is made for fans, and it uses some very unconventional forms of storytelling. The narrative is not like what we're used to, but just the fact that we're having bad guys versus evil is there to tell you that this is going to be a very, very different type of comic book movie. It's definitely not a superhero film because there really aren't superheroes as protagonists. These are bad guys. So that right alone, that right there already tells you that we're going to see a very different type of film. And this is a film made for fans. There's a lot of fan service in this movie, which leads me to talk about the plot. As a film, the plot is a bit of a mess. But for comic book fans, you're gonna love this because it's just so full of fan service. Once again, full of unconventional methods of storytelling, but still, we're getting a film that is essentially taking the pages right out of the comic books. So that is something that comic book fans will love. But for the casual moviegoers and people who are not familiar with the source material, you're gonna be thinking, like, what the hell was that? Yeah, a lot of WTF moments do exist in this movie. So I'm not going to talk too much about the plot. Let's just get into the characters. We got Deadshot, that is played by Will Smith, and at first I thought it was a little bit of a questionable casting choice, but actually Will Smith owned it. I thought Will Smith was perfect for Deadshot, and I loved every scene that he was in. Next we got Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie. Absolutely perfect. Once again, steals the show, owns every scene that she's in. So right there, we got Harley Quinn and Deadshot, who were perfectly cast and perfectly portrayed already. Jared Leto as a Joker, no complaints there. He was perfect, he was excellent. Heath Ledger's still the best, but every scene that he's in, he rocks. I just wish we could have seen a bit more of him. Amanda Waller is a true badass, played by Viola Davis, and she nails the character, and she proves that she's a character that is not to be messed with. Now, as for everybody else, with the exception of Katana, I think that everybody else was a bit underused. I thought Katana was good, but everybody else, well, there are other members of the Suicide Squad, and they kind of, I feel like they didn't quite make the cut. El Diablo, I think he could have done a lot more. He was played by Jay Hernandez, and he just, you know, he doesn't do a whole lot in this movie. I wish he could have done a lot more. I mean, you did see a little bit more depth in his character compared to the others, and there's quite a bit of backstory to his character, and but there is a little bit of development. It's just not enough to make me care enough for his character, so that's unfortunate. Captain Boomerang felt totally wasted. This is really unfortunate because Jai Courtney, he owned the role in the acting and the way he portrayed the character, but the physical aspect of his character was nothing special at all. We didn't get to see the Captain Boomerang that was doing this and this and this with boomerangs in the comic books. We just don't get to see a whole lot of that. We just get to see him using the boomerangs in a very non-Captain Boomerang way, if you will. So that was really wasted, but he still played a good Captain Boomerang, or rather George Harkness, in the sense that the acting was on point, okay? Who else is there? Oh, Killer Croc, played by AAA. I wish that Killer Croc could have done so much more than just be a reptilian wrestler. He just manhandled bad guys, but, you know, I wish he could have brought out the animalistic rage in his character. I wish they could have shown more of that, but in a 2-hour movie, you can only show so much, and you gotta make it clear who the main characters really are, and in this case, it was Harley Quinn and Deadshot, which I have no complaints about. Now there's Joel Kinnaman, played by Rick Flag, and I gotta say that Rick Flag was a poor choice. That was a miscast. Joel Kinnaman is a bit of a bad actor, in my opinion, just because I've seen him in the RoboCop remake, and we know how that was. And essentially, he's playing the kind of the same character. And he's just, like, whining all the time, always acting angry, and there's really no depth to his character. He's just, like, blah. Which leads me to talk about Enchantress, played by Cara Delevingne, and poor casting choice. Her character is, like, very mystical, so, you know, you gotta add a little bit of CG work. It was terrible CG work, okay? Man, that was just awkward. In a word, she was awkward. And, I kind of feel like she should have been excluded from the film, and I think it would have made for a better film had the story had less to do with her. So, that's really unfortunate. Anyways, let's talk about the direction, and I think David Ayer is a great director. I mean, he did give us Fury, which I really, really loved, and I really respect him for tackling Suicide Squad. This is a difficult task to take on, but I think he took the job of bringing the comic book pages to the live-action screen a little bit too literally, and it just kind of ended up not, I won't say not great, but ending up kind of messy. Now, don't give me that crap about the studio interference. I'm here to review what I saw. I'm here to talk about the end result. So all that stuff about studio interference and all that stuff, that has nothing to do with what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about what I saw, and the end result was not as great as it could have been. The movie feels like there could have been a lot more to it. I know there's a 2-hour running time, but they got a lot of characters to handle, and that is a huge task within itself. A lot of scenes just feel like they end abruptly, or they start up without any proper setup. And it just feels like that throughout the entire movie. They don't even really set up the main conflict of the movie. They just suddenly determine who the villain is, what the conflict is, and then suddenly send in Task Force X. Just bring them in and then start fighting. And that happens really, really early in the film, and, you know, it makes sense because this is a Suicide Squad movie, but for like, you know, a casual moviegoer, you're probably thinking, like, what? That's it? Like, this is the villain and then that's it? Like, that's what it really feels like, okay? So, we don't really get to learn a whole lot about what is really going on in terms of the conflict. It's just like, boom, that's it, deal with it. So, yeah, it feels like there could have been a lot more to it than just what we were given. As for the pacing of the film, I feel like it was a good pace. It was, you know, pretty action-packed, and it moves pretty fast and pretty smoothly, but then it's kind of broken up by these awkward placement of flashbacks. You know, I appreciate all the flashbacks in the beginning of the movie because it's here to tell you about the characters, and it gives you some background about the characters, but I wish that they could have left some of those flashbacks all at the beginning, because, you know, the pacing was fine, and then suddenly it starts getting broken up by these flashback sequences, and I appreciate all the homages and all the Easter eggs and all the comic book references. I loved all that. I just felt that it's just placed in the wrong spots. Okay, that's just my opinion. I felt it broke up the pacing of the film when the pacing was just going quite well. You know what I'm saying? The tone of the film is also something that felt a little bit off. I feel like the film doesn't know if it wants to be an action comedy or a serious comic book film. And so what we ended up was a serious comic book film with little bits of awkward humor thrown here and there. And it looks like they're trying to be a serious film. When you watch the film, like as it progresses, it feels like a serious film. But then at the beginning of the film, like near some parts, there's a little bit of campy humor. And I'm going to give you a very specific scene. In no way it spoils anything, but there's a scene where Harley Quinn puts on her shirt, and then you see her in her underwear and a bra, and then like everybody, a lot of people are just standing still. And then she goes, "What?" And then the next shot is them walking again, as if nothing happened. And this is a very slapstick style of humor. It's a slapstick comedy beat. So you would think that this type of humor exists throughout the entire film. It doesn't. It's just mainly for that one scene, and it just kind of throws things off when you have humor like that thrown in very, very, I guess, spaced out parts of the movie. And it just feels odd. Now you're probably thinking, well, what about Deadpool and Guardians of the Galaxy? Those were films that are a similar type of, I guess, style, right? Actually, no. Deadpool's humor is actually an extension of his character, and Guardians of the Galaxy had comedy consistent throughout the entire movie. This is not consistent. The tone of the film is just feels really, really off because it doesn't know if it wants to be in a serious film or a comedy. And because of that, a lot of the comedy that's thrown in there is just not as funny as it could have been, right? It just doesn't work right, all right? And I want to talk about the music. This is something that I noticed, and that is, I loved a lot of the music. I loved a lot of it, okay? A lot of original songs there, which I really enjoyed, and also a lot of classic songs, which were put in that also worked as well. But maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of those songs just didn't work. It just felt like they just threw them in and they didn't get placed in the right places. For example, and once again, specific scene, but does not spoil the movie in any way. Harley Quinn goes up an elevator, and then they start playing K7's Come Baby Come, okay? And that song just didn't work for the scene at all. It just felt awkward. And like, these are one of the things that I felt really kind of hurt the movie because it affects the tone of the film. So that didn't quite work for me, but I still got to say that like 85% of the songs that were used did work. I mean, they were really, really well placed in, okay? Now, I want to talk about the action in this movie. Very, very action-packed, a lot of action. I think a lot of people that love gunplay action will really enjoy this. There was a lot of it. But I gotta say that once we get to the final act of the film, it just felt like a terrible CG slugfest. It just was a big mess, you know, a lot of poor CG, which really distracts you from from the believability of the film, and also like it's just a lot of the other action in the climactic battle is just a big mess. It was poorly shot. It's not very clear as to what you're looking at. There's a lot of smoke, and then I didn't really enjoy that part as much as I would have liked to, but everything else before that I really enjoyed. I love the gun battles. There's a lot of it, but of course there's like soldiers in it, as well as the Deadshot, who just steals every scene that he's in. He's very, very believable as an expert marksman, and of course Harley Quinn just kicks so much ass, but a lot of the other characters feel very, very underused, but still the action is pretty solid when it happens, okay? There's a very fast moving film, and the action really works in this film, except for once we get to the final battle. I think that's all I really have to say, other than the fact that this film really works as a comic book movie. I loved all the comic book references. Harley Quinn was great. Deadshot was great. Joker was great. I even loved the relationship that was shown for Joker and Harley Quinn's character. I love that they brought that in this film, and a lot of the stuff already exists. It's not an origin story. Of course, it's an origins for how the Suicide Squad come together, but it's not in any way an origin story for any of these characters. We're given brief flashbacks or like backstories, but that's all you really need. And that type of flashback storytelling, like that backstory storytelling at the beginning of the movie, is straight out of the comic books. It's like turning the pages of the comic books and learning about these characters. So in a way, this really, really works as a comic book film. And if I had to change anything about this film, I would have excluded the Enchantress and just done something else with that. I would have just done that because like, Enchantress was just a really awkward character in my opinion. Like, once again, the terrible CG work, just the awkward casting choice, and just it just feels like we're not ready to see that yet. Maybe in Suicide Squad 2, but maybe not this film. And for casual moviegoers and non-comic book fans, I think they'll feel that a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie is kind of illogical, and a lot of WTF moments, and like a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense. But that's just what it is. It's a comic book movie. It's a movie made for comic book fans. And I think that David Ayer, he took on a really, really tough task, and he did a very bold thing in making this movie, and I think he did a decent job, okay? This is a film that was entertaining for the most part. It captured a lot of the comic book elements. It's very true to the source material. And I enjoyed it for what it is, and it is better than Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, in my opinion. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. I mean, the Batman vs. Superman. I'm going to give Suicide Squad a 6 out of 10. It's slightly better, okay? I enjoyed this more, and I felt that, you know, I wasn't bored at any point in time. I didn't feel the pacing was off, well, except for the flashbacks and the awkward moments. But other than that, I was very, very entertained. Final battle sequence needs some major improvement there, but other than that, it's a solid entry into DC Extended Universe, and I think that Batman fans will really love this film, okay? So there you have it. That's all I gotta say in this review. I will be picking this movie up on Blu-ray. I can't wait to see Wonder Woman, and actually I'm looking forward to a Birds of Prey movie. You know, featuring Harley Quinn, and I'm looking forward to Suicide Squad 2, which is actually a film that's in talks. David Ayer is signed on to direct. He wants Will Smith to be in it, and it's only going to happen if this movie, The Suicide Squad, makes a lot of money, so hopefully that does happen. Anyways, that's all I got to say in this review. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation. Also follow me on Twitter, @RaginNation. My name's Alex Yu. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. Alright, so that's all you really need to know. And Paul Greengrass, who directed The Bourne Supremacy and The Bourne Ultimatum, is back to direct for this 5th